In the past week, U.S. Border Patrol agents, plus Immigration, Customs Enforcement ICE, informed the American people that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden allowed 435,431 convicted felons and non-citizens to enter America without pause or investigation of their profiles. Take a deep breath. Take that into your mind. Kamala allowed another 13,099 convicted murderers to enter the United States without so much as an ankle bracelet. She invited another 25,272 sexual assault rapists from dozens of countries into our country. She allowed another 15,800 convicted rapists into America. A mind-numbing 30,000 criminals of all kinds were allowed into America. The report stated that 1.9 million illegal alien non-citizens were gotaways who never reported to the Border Patrol, but escaped into America. Some 300,000 minors were brought into America, but no one knows where they landed. Virtually none of the 13 million illegal aliens that entered our country illegally in the past 3.5 years, as reported by the U.S. Border Patrol, gave a valid ID as to their birth dates, place of birth, or country. Donald J. Trump said, "There is no greater act of disloyalty for Kamala Harris than to destroy her own country's sovereignty on purpose." And yet, half the country's voters will vote for a woman who has allowed the greatest invasion of our country, or any country in the history of the world. If you don't think 13 million plus illegal border hoppers aren't part of an invasion, what do you call it? On social media, you cannot reason with people who believe the woman Kamala, who has done nothing in 3.5 years, is suddenly capable of fixing everything in the world. Then you look at the Democrat mayors and governors of sanctuary states and cities who procure their citizens' tax dollars to house, feed, warm, transport, educate, and birth their illegal anchor babies. Name one country, just one, that taxes their people and sends the money to the United States. I'll wait for your answer. Then you have to ask yourself, how, in the name of rational thinking and common sense, with even a touch of ethics, did Jill Biden allow her dementia-ridden husband to continue toward the White House? How, in the name of sanity, did she try to have him run for a second term when she knew he suffered from accelerating Alzheimer's disease? Why did his closest advisors remain silent? Why did Kamala continue the facade? Does treason come to mind? We're talking about a man who has the nuclear codes, but doesn't know what day of the week it is. A quote on social media. Kamala is twice the stupidity without dementia. Who in their right mind would vote for Kamala when she is responsible for countless tons of fentanyl and other drugs that flow across our borders like the Colorado River in reverse? I mean, she's responsible for over 250,000 drug overdose deaths. She could have stopped the flow of drugs with the simple stroke of a pen. She simply needed to uphold the laws on the books. Instead, she acted like a runaway drug store supervisor who dispensed those drugs to everyone. Do you think the parents of all those dead kids are going to vote for her? What about the parents of the next 250,000 drug overdosed kids who die if Kamala reaches the White House? I'll give you a 10-to-1 bet that she will open our borders to another 13 million more illegals if she enjoys 4 years in the White House. Donald J. Trump said, "Before we ask what is fair to illegal immigrants, we must ask what is fair to American families, students, and taxpayers." Why do Democrats put illegal aliens first and American citizens last? Why don't all those Democrats open their own homes to the 13 million illegal aliens that they supported to break into our country? Why don't those sanctuary cities let their citizens give those millions of illegals a spare room and food? Do you see the duplicity? After Oprah Winfrey interviewed Kamala Harris, you could see the look on Oprah's face and what was spinning in her mind. Oh my God, Biden is smarter than her. If Kamala reaches the White House, China will invade Taiwan. Israel will be wiped off the face of the planet, and Putin will blow Ukraine to pieces. Kamala, who lacks any understanding of economics, will wreak havoc on the American consumer. In simple terms, she's a woman who has jumped into the 12-foot deep end of a pool, but has no idea how to swim. Worse, there are no lifeguards to save her. Kamala's father was a prominent Marxist professor named Donald Harris, who wrote the book on modern-day Marxism. You've heard the phrase, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, when your parents brainwash you into thinking Marxism stands as the answer, it's virtually impossible to change that kind of programming. Remember when she said, "I haven't changed my values." You can be certain of everything she said about defunding the police, abolishing ICE, tearing down the border wall, price controls, allowing illegals to gain citizenship, ad nauseum. She will employ all of these if she reaches the White House. So, you better ask yourself if you want your neighborhood to become loaded with 20,000 Haitians or Somalians or Congolese or Sudanese or Iraqis or Turks or Egyptians or another 100 ethnic groups living on welfare like in Springfield, Illinois. You might want to ask yourself if you want countless Middle Eastern Muslims to be chanting, "Death to America," at their rallies in favor of Hamas slaughtering Jewish women and children. You might ask yourself if you want your kids to be introduced to fentanyl. How would you like your children's classrooms filled with really low IQ third-world immigrants who will totally degrade your children's education to a point where they too become functionally illiterate? You might ask yourself if you want Kamala to support defund the police, like she stated in 2020 as Minneapolis, Minnesota burned to the ground. She supported lawlessness, and defended it, and stated that it should continue. If Kamala Harris reaches the White House, the majority of Americans who voted her into our most sacred office will find that they were the dumbest, utterly stupidest, and brainwashed people on the planet. They will discover that NBC, CBS, ABC, NPR, PBS, MSNBC, Joy Reid, Joe Scarborough, Jake Tapper, et al. And the rest of the biased media will have led Americans over a cultural, demographic, linguistic, religious, and worldview cliff. Once we go over that cliff, there will be no parachutes to save us. I know that most American citizens are not prepared for the future that is screaming toward them by their own hand. If you don't think so, read my book, America's Overpopulation Predicament, Blindsiding Future Generations by Frosty Wooldridge. That book will graphically and factually show you that our civilization cannot and will not survive this massive immigrant invasion.